All right, let's get into it. If you've spent any time at all in the online book world lately, you have definitely heard the name Eric LaRocca. He's one of contemporary horror's most talked about, most acclaimed, and yeah, most divisive authors. So in this explainer, we're going to break down who they are, what makes their work tick, and why it starts so many arguments. It all pretty much starts right here. This is the title that launched 1,000 arguments and shot an author's career into the stratosphere. I mean, just read it. It feels like a confession, an accusation, and a promise that things are about to get really, really bad. And in horror, that's exactly what you want. So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How did this super short, intense story about a queer relationship just completely imploding, how did that become a legit viral sensation? It wasn't just another book. It became this cultural flashpoint, something everyone had a hot take on. Honestly, it was a perfect storm. First, you had that title, which is just impossible to ignore. Then, you had that haunting, surreal cover art. And the story itself, about a relationship falling apart online, landed right when we were all stuck inside, living our lives through screens during the pandemic. It tapped right into all our anxieties about digital connection and isolation. It was short, punchy, and just incredibly timely. But, to really understand the work, you have to understand the person who created it. So let's zoom out from that one viral novella and meet the author behind all the buzz. So who is Eric LaRocca? Well, they're a seriously decorated author. They've been a finalist for the huge Bram Stoker Award, but also a winner of the Splatterpunk Award, which is for, extreme, super graphic horror. That right there tells you a lot about their incredible range. What's also really interesting is their background as a playwright. You can totally see that influence in their fiction. And today, they're seen as a really key voice in what people are calling the queer horror renaissance. Now, if there's one phrase that unlocks LaRocca's entire approach to writing, this is it. They call themselves a literary mortician. It's a striking image, right? But it perfectly explains their whole creative philosophy. And this quote just nails what they mean by that. Think about it. A mortician takes something awful, death, and presents it with grace and care, so people can find a little beauty or peace. LaRocca does the same thing with horrifying subjects. Instead of just trying to shock you, the goal is to present the grotesque with this kind of terrible beauty, making it just palatable enough for us to look at and really think about. Okay, so let's dig into how that mortician philosophy actually shows up on the page. It creates this signature writing style that is all about this powerful, deliberate contrast. LaRocca's work didn't just appear out of nowhere. You can totally see the DNA of other boundary-pushing queer writers. There's the unapologetic psychosexual horror of Clive Barker. There are echoes of Michael McDowell's knack for using beautiful, poetic language to describe truly unsettling things. And then there's that transgressive spirit of Chuck Palahniuk, that willingness to just blow past what's considered good taste. The first thing most people notice is the language itself. This isn't your typical, straightforward horror writing. It's often described as lyrical, poetic, almost sumptuous. The sentences are crafted with this elegance you'd expect to find in classic Gothic literature, and it creates this incredibly rich atmosphere. But, and this is the absolute heart of the style, that gorgeous language is used to describe things that are just incredibly graphic and deeply disturbing. That clash, that juxtaposition, is the engine of the whole thing. The beauty makes the brutality readable, and the brutality makes the beauty feel even more shocking. And it's so important to get that this is 100% intentional. LaRocca has said it themselves. The goal isn't to make you feel comfortable or to give you an easy ride. The goal is to be transgressive, to feel a little forbidden. It's all about challenging you, provoking a reaction, and pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable in fiction. So, while things have gotten worse might be how most people discover them, LaRocca has a whole growing body of work. And no surprise, wherever the work goes, debate seems to follow. Let's look at the bigger picture. This gives you a great snapshot of the journey so far. You've got the viral novella in 2021, but also the collection The Strange Thing We Become, which really doubles down on exploring the shadow side of love. Then you see this really successful pivot to full-length novels with Everything the Darkness Eats and the super anticipated At Dark I Become Loathsome. The momentum is just undeniable. Across all these books, you start to see these key themes over and over again. LaRocca seems fascinated by the anti-hero, these morally gray, often unlikable characters. Horror is used as this vehicle to explore really heavy stuff like trauma and grief. And then there's this recurring theme of transformation, how love and pain can literally mutate a person into something else. As you can probably guess, a style that is designed from the ground up to provoke, well, it provokes. LaRocca's work has become a total lightning rod for these really intense conversations about art, representation, and what the limits of horror should be.
Now, what's so interesting here is how it lays out the two sides of the argument. On one side, you have critics saying the work sometimes uses problematic queer tropes, or that the violence feels gratuitous. But on the other side, you have the author's defense, which is that queer characters deserve the right to be complex, to be flawed, even to be monstrous. LaRocca frames their work as amoral, not immoral. It presents a case and then positions you, the reader, as the juror to decide what you think.
So with all this success and all this controversy, where does Eric LaRocca actually fit into the bigger picture of modern horror? Let's talk about their lasting impact.
And look, this isn't just online hype. You've got major genre publications like Locus magazine calling LaRocca one of the strongest and most unique voices out there. That kind of critical acclaim on top of the commercial success really solidifies their position as a major player.
LaRocca's rise to fame is a huge part of this wider movement people are calling the queer horror renaissance. At its heart, it's about openly queer authors who are moving past the old days of subtext and metaphor. They're exploring queer identity, desire, and darkness explicitly right there on the page, without flinching.
So how exactly are they moving the genre forward? Well, first, as we said, they make the subtext the main text. No more hiding in metaphors. Second, the work is deeply personal. It channels the experience of being an outsider into the art itself. And third, it consciously continues that literary tradition of queer transgression, carrying the torch from authors like Clive Barker into a new century.
When you really boil it all down, LaRocca's biggest contribution is probably this: the marriage of two things that are usually kept in separate rooms. You have the sophisticated, lyrical, almost high art prose, and you have the shocking, transgressive content of extreme horror. Fusing those two together is what creates that unique, powerful, and unforgettable effect.
And all that leaves us with the big question that LaRocca's work forces us to ask, not just about their books, but about all transgressive art. Does horror need to have a neat, tidy moral at the end? Does it have to teach us a lesson? Or is its highest purpose just to force us, in the most eloquent way possible, to look directly at the things we'd much rather not see? That's the debate LaRocca leaves us with.